Right here. Hide behind this, yeah?
Go on together, please. Right here.
Romeo and the girl.
Here, please. Over here. Over to the right side, please. A little higher. A little more to the right side. Please turn to the right side.
Yeah, this is your eye. This is my finger. Over here. Okay. And over here. See each other.
Right up, please.
Here, please.
In the long run.
Down, please, in the middle. Go.
Up here. Here, please.
Okay, now all three down, please. Three, not that down.
Clear. Oh, give me a big smile. Once again, please.
Well, what about Juliet?
Yeah, okay, come on here.
Right here.
Here.
Okay, smile.
More closer, please. Closer. Higher. Closer.
She's very young. Jenny must want some warm.
That's it.
Right here.
A little bit to your right.
Right, come on. We have to. Thank you.
Like between them?
Claire, up here.
Stay on top.
Claire, right here. That's not terrible. Claire, right here, please. Claire, don't smile. Don't swear.
Okay. Okay.
There, over here. There. Clear up here.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Up here. Claire.
ladies and gentlemen, could you please sit down? We're not running away. Schönen Dank.
One more time up here. Yeah, please, here.
Thomas, take it easy. Okay, bitte setzen. Können wir uns bitte setzen? Können wir uns alle setzen? Ja. Can we all sit down? Okay. They're very good guys, aren't they? Okay. Can we sort it out here in the front? Okay. Bisschen runter, ne? Okay. Guten Abend, meine Damen und Herren. I'd like to open the press conference on the film William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. And I would like to introduce our guests to us. I start off with Baz Luhrmann, the director and co-scriptwriter. It's getting hot, huh? Welcome to Claire Danes, who played Juliet. And special welcome to you, the production designer Catherine Martin. First question on the right-hand side. If you could, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, congratulations on an incredible movie, and I would like to make you to comment a bit on the stylistic side of the movie, which is quite unique, especially the mise en scène. If you could comment on that and what your thoughts were on the stylistic elements of the movie.
Well, I guess that's one for me. Actually, everything in the film, everything that we did, came from the initial question that we asked. And the question that we asked was, if William Shakespeare was making a movie, what kind of movie would he make? Now, there's probably some people in this room that's heard me do this little speech once before, because it is in fact our mantra in a way, because there's a very few things that you actually know about Shakespeare that are real facts. But it is a fact that he had an audience of 3,000 drunken punters. And it is a fact that he had to sort of compete with bear baiting and prostitution. And that as a storyteller, he was absolutely relentless in his use of device, and he would do anything to actually communicate his story to an audience. So we really spent a lot of time analysing the stage of Shakespeare and trying to convert that into a cinematic language. And that's really the point from which we began. And I guess if we went through different elements in the film, we could then backtrack that to how that came out of that research.
We have a question here on the right-hand side again. Thank you.
This is to the director. Can you tell us how you went about casting this film? As you were writing the screenplay, did you envision certain actors in mind, and were they used in the film? Did you have casting approval? And finally, once your cast was chosen, how much rehearsal time did your actors have in preparing for their roles?
Well, about approval, I guess there are some executives from Fox in here, so
Is there anyone?
No, they're not here. Well, no, look, in real truth, just in terms of the process of it, for me, Leonardo was always Romeo only in the sense that about the time I was thinking about doing this project, I saw an image of him. And I remember thinking, God, he looks like Romeo. I wonder if he can act. And I think that week he was nominated for an Academy Award for Gilbert Grape. So, it was fairly clear that he was an interesting actor, and then it was about going to him and, talking about doing the role. And, he in fact came to Australia twice to be involved in early workshops to explore the idea of doing the role, but also to help very much with getting a commitment from the studio to do the film. And so, he became very involved in the process early on. Now, when it comes to Juliet, actually, I searched, I've never said this in front of Claire, but I did search the world, really, for Juliet. I went to London and Australia and New York and everywhere. And at the time, I wasn't aware of Claire because she was actually on American television. And it was, well, I'm sure you'd done other things. Tell me if I say the wrong thing. But
Never, no.
Well, it was Jane Campion, actually, who said, have you seen the Claire Bear, as she referred to her? I'm not sure why. But, and I said, no, I don't know of her. And then when I returned to the US, Claire and I did our first session, which was without Leonardo. And then I put Claire with Leonardo. And it was in that moment that I realized she really was the first actor that I had worked with who was the correct age, but also had this strength to match him as an actor on the floor. And it was really a very, very long journey to find someone who could do this. In fact, Peter O'Toole, who at one stage was playing Father Lawrence, said to me, problem of Juliet, dear boy, finding a 16-year-old who can act like a 30-year-old, good luck, And I mean, he was really pointing out what was going to be a sort of 6 months journey for me, which ended in casting Claire Danes, which I'm happy about.
It was funny because Leo has this quote that's just been in every magazine, out there. But, he says, well, Claire was the only actress who looked, directly in my eyes and who was really confrontational. And I remember doing the audition with him, and I was like the 5th actress he had seen that day who was just really exhausted and tired and not in the mood. And so, I really needed a partner in order to do the scene well. So I knew he liked to act, because any good actor does. And I just sort of coaxed him into playing with me, which acting basically is. So I remember seducing him to acting with me. And I could only do it by, sort of saying, come on, Leo, get off your ass and let's do this, So, and that was it wasn't even because I intended on, playing Juliet that specific way or anything, but I just wanted him to work with me and be involved with me in the scene, and yeah, he was down for it, but it took a little coaxing.
All that is true, but I have got to say, right now, let's not have an argument here. But I have got to say that actually, having seen that scene many, many, many times, that when Claire came in and worked with Dee on it, for the first time, kind of Juliet drove the scene. If you look at the piece, she really drives that story. You know, it's, you know, let's get, you know, if you want to have sex with me, we've got to be married. You know, why don't we? All those active things. And I memean, finding someone who could be active against Leonardo was no easy task. So, any case, it was one of those moments where, I mean, there was no question really. The moment they got together, it was for me like, yes, that can be, and we went from that point on. As far as the studio approval and casting, it was a long journey, and I did keep going because, particularly when you think of the younger actors, the guys, you know, finding a lot of them in New York and a lot of them hadn't done films before. It was really important that we kept going until we got the right people, and that's what we set out to do.
There's a follow-up one there.
Actually, it was the third part of the question about rehearsal time. You mentioned that you had workshops. What was the process in preparing the actors for the film, and how much rehearsal time did you actually have?
We had the early workshops, which were really about developing the idea. And then we had periods of rehearsal before we went to Mexico and some periods when we went to Mexico. I mean, the difficulty of the shoot made it a bit more commando style as we got going through the process. But it was as much as possible about finding, in the kind of maelstrom that is filmmaking, the time to just sit and deal with text. That was really where we spent most of our time. I think we insisted upon, no matter what else happened, knowing what every word that was being spoken meant.
Baz made a real point of having all of our performances being as clear as possible. We couldn't be too obvious because, you know, Shakespeare can be kind of obscure because it is essentially another language. But once you understand what he's saying word for word, you know, it's very easy to, well, not very, but you know, it's easier to go on with your performance. But we used to do these ridiculous exercises where, you know, we would for every word we said, we'd have to find a physical way to express that. So, like if Romeo was saying, "Oh, I'll meet you at the hour of 9," you know, he'd make a 9 with his body. I mean, we felt just, you know, very silly.
Silly, I know, yeah. Thanks, Claire. Yeah.
But it worked, I guess.
Yeah, thank you. We've never done this before, have we? I've got a few for you now.
Oh, okay.
We have a question here on the right-hand side. Someone, first one, yeah.
I got two questions. First to Miss Dane. As a preparation for your role, did you see any classical performances of Romeo and Juliet on film? And if which one did you like the most? And to the director, some critics, especially in Europe, say Shakespeare doesn't work in movies like this one. Nevertheless, you made the film, but is there a limit for you where you would say this material cannot be transformed into this kind of movie, or would you say everything is possible?
I did see Zeffirelli's version, which is often called Olivia Hussey's version. They forget about Romeo entirely, which says something about her performance. So she and I just was petrified because I thought, oh my goodness, could she be any more beautiful? Could she be any more talented? I don't think so. But no, so she had a really great interpretation of the role. Mine was really different. And so I had a few panic attacks and got over that initial fear and decided that I really needed to throw other people's, you know, sort of performances of the role or people's preconceptions of who Juliet was just out the window and start from scratch. And it was very clear to me who Juliet was immediately after I finished reading the play. And I wanted to make her as real and as accessible as possible. And hopefully I accomplished that. I didn't want to romanticize the role. I kind of wanted to bring her, you know, down, you know, from the balcony and ground her a bit. You know, it's funny because the words are so, they have such an amazing power to them just naturally because Shakespeare's words are so incredibly profound and beautiful. But they've, you know, they've been around for so long that they seem kind of intangible. And you know, this is just a girl who is just fallen completely and madly in love, and she's terribly infatuated. So, but she's their new feelings for her. And I remember the first time I felt that way. I was just so obnoxious to be around. I was an idiot. I was dropping things. Couldn't stop smiling. You know, people just wanted to slap me. So, I mean, the feelings were kind of immature, and I think what people think with Shakespeare, that the feeling should be separated from the language, and that's not true. And hopefully I sort of married those two things, and once I embraced the language and really figured out what I was saying, the words were real keys into the feelings. I don't know if that's clear, but yeah, I think I answered the question.
Actually, a lot of people say, what a modern Juliet Claire is. But it is, in fact, I think, the Juliet in the text. You know, the character is always modern. You know, she is an active character. She drives the scene. And I think the thing that I was very happy about myself that Claire achieved was that Juliet wasn't this kind of, you know, bird in a tower waiting to be saved. She was a very active character who affected the story.
Well, I think because Juliet has become such an idol, that people feel that they can't really embody as kind of godlike person. And she wasn't godlike. She was just a chick, you know, who, well, I mean, she had a rather extraordinary life because she was so wealthy, but she was just a girl. And really dramatic things happened to her in a very short period of time, and she was forced to deal with them. But if I could be Juliet, anybody could, and that's kind of what I wanted to get across.
We have a question here on the left-hand side.
In French, deux questions en français.
Is that right? Do you speak French?
Pour Mr.
Take those.
No, un peu.
Take those.
But, okay.
Number 2. Channel number 2.
Channel number 2. Yeah, I have it.
Bon, pour Monsieur Luhrmann, pour Mr. Luhrmann, est-ce que Richard, la version écranisée de Macallan, vous a inspiré, vous a encouragé, vous a encouragé dans ce projet? Et puis pour Madame la productrice, la seconde question. Comment avez-vous osé de miser tant d'argent sur des professionnels si jeunes? La promotion de la jeune génération fonctionne bien à Hollywood.
The answer really to the first question is I haven't seen Ian McKellar's Richard III. So, I can't really comment on that, except that, I mean, when you're making a film about Shakespeare, there's a lot of the ones I haven't seen. You tend not to go out and watch them just because you like to deal with other things at night. But so I haven't seen that. Now, that second question, is that to the production designer, Catherine Martin?
It was actually to the producer. It was about
Really?
the fact that how do you justify spending the money that was spent on Romeo and Juliet? How did the studio,
Well, look, that is an interesting point. I mean, the studio did not want to make this film. But I mean, there wasn't this, immense, Hollywood discovers Shakespeare. Yes, let's do it. And it was a great struggle to show and to reveal that the notion would work. And that's why we, in fact, made these little video workshops that Leonardo, for no money, came down and worked with me on. And it wasn't until actually they sort of saw these guys get out of cars and walk up and say, "This does not forgive you, boy, for the injury you have done me," that people kind of said, "Oh yeah, I get it. It's kind of like Gangs, That's good. Gangs is good, So it was really having said that, once we kind of pestered them enough, they very bravely and absolutely said, "Yeah, here's the check for 15 million. Go away and let's whatever. I guess we can take a fall."
They didn't think that it was a fait accompli, that there was a ready-made audience for this kind of Shakespeare. That was more something that I suppose we believed in. That we believed that making a Shakespeare in this way would find a new audience for Shakespeare. I mean, that was part of the reason why you made the movie, Baz.
Yeah, well, I mean, the cue for us was to deal. I mean, look, when the guy wrote these, plays, they were for everyone. I mean, the notion of sort of a tragedy in a quiet little room where everyone sat down and went, lovely, fantastic, isn't it? I mean, like the audience for whom this was written was everyone, and really our interest was to claim it back for that audience. Now, the idea that we could do that wasn't something that was easily accepted, and it was a great struggle. But and I mean, the studio was surprised, and I have to say we were too when it went #1 and opened in the US. That was a great surprise. So I hope that answers your question.
Further questions? There on the right-hand side.
This is a question to the director. I enjoy the film very much, but let me ask you this provocative question. Most of us, whether we're English speakers, German speakers, we've read Shakespeare as a text, as literature on the page.
Yes.
My question is, and in the time of Shakespeare, when he performed his plays, the Globe Theatre, on a very simple stage with very austere set design. And people were able to savor the language as it was spoken on stage, or we savor the language as we read it in the text. Was there any concern on your part with your fast visual images that the images would overwhelm the power of the language of Shakespeare? And was it a concern to the producers or the studio as well?
Well, the end of the question is no, that wasn't a concern to the studio. But, you know, when we talk,
language, the better.
Well, when we talk about actually the Shakespeare's stage, I mean, what we do know about what happened on that stage was that he would do absolutely anything to engage the audience in the telling of the story. So, for example, we have, you know, stand-up comedy 1 minute, a pop song the next, and then we have tragedy right next to it. And so it's a very eclectic mix. And in fact, people are very keen on saying, oh, well, it's an MTV. You know, that eclecticism is MTV. I mean, if it's like anything, it's kind of like a Hindi movie, I think. You know, one of those films where you have a Busby Berkeley moment and then you have tragedy right next to it. But the real point is this, is that the question was, if Shakespeare were making a movie, what would he do? And we can't really speak for him on many things, but I think we can be fairly safe in saying he would engage every possible asset he had available to him to clarify and tell that story. And so, I mean, language, I mean, the man made up 1/4 of the English language. You know, language was a great weapon of his, but he also staged some of the most, you know, horrifying, stage and violent scenes. He also put in music, you know. He would use anything to tell story. And really, that's the cue that we took.
There was another question on the left hand. Yes, please.
What have you done to the Nightingale, or did I miss it?
No. You know, it's an interesting thing about the text because we've done a cut. I mean, most Shakespeare's are cut. We've cut about 1/3 to 1/2. I mean, people do kind of refer to the Zeffirelli as the traditional production. Interestingly enough, I mean, Zeffirelli changed words and added additional dialogue. This is a cut of the Shakespeare text, but it is an absolutely accurate version of that text. It is William Shakespeare's words. I think in terms of Nightingale, there's certainly a cut there. There are cuts right throughout the piece. But I think cutting was about really driving the story forward. So what I've done with it is I cut it.
Question on the right-hand side.
Mr. Luhrmann, you still haven't answered my second question. Is there a limit for you where you would say this material cannot be transformed in such kind of movie?
Oh, do you mean that would other pieces by Shakespeare be able to be... Look, I think you can. I think you could do it with any piece. And in fact, on the stage, they do it all the time. I mean, we did a Midsummer Night's Dream at the Edinburgh Festival, set in, you know, India in the time of the Raj, excuse me. But the point is, I mean, I think it's wrong to set out to do that. I think that the process that, we follow is to say, here is the story. How do we convey this story? How do we reveal this piece? And it may be that the next Shakespeare we do as an absolutely accurate, you know, execution of the Elizabethan stage, you know, in the dress as far as we can ascertain of that time. But can you do it? Yes, I think there's no limit.
Here's a question here in the middle.
This question is for Claire. I understand that you studied at the Lee Strasberg Theatre Institute in New York, and I was wondering how that influenced your development as an actor and perhaps your preparation for the role of Juliet.
I was about 11 years old when I went to Lee Strasberg for half a year, and in the press it's been written up like I was his apprentice for 10. No, I mean, I loved it, but most of the kids in that class were dropped off by their parents. It was either that or tennis class, and they were more into looking at themselves in the mirror than anything else. But I was really trying to, feel the wind. And I remember we had this exercise where you had to have an egg, imagine an egg cracking down on you, and everywhere the yolk touched your body just would relax automatically. And I was really into that. Yes, yes. But no, I use very little of that. I think most of it, I try to, I wish I had a process because I'd feel much more secure if I did. Basically, I daydream a lot. Once I've committed to a character, I spend a lot of time doing a lot of work unconsciously. And then once I'm there on the set, once I'm surrounded by the ambiance of whatever location we're shooting at, and once I put on the costumes and wear the wig or talk to the other actors, things automatically feel much more real. Yeah, but
But you are really meticulous in your preparation of it.
Yeah, I am, and I really need to. If I feel shaky about what kind of person I'm portraying, I'll feel insecure and it won't work. But and I would die if it didn't work. Yeah, I guess I'm meticulous. I guess I'm a reflective actor more than an active one.
You weren't tricking me, were you, by any chance?
What do you think I am? What do you think my process is, my method?
You did hours on the text.
No, I did. And I'll go home and
Much more
really my most brilliant moments are in the bathtub. I should have hidden cameras all around my house because I do really great stuff when I'm alone. And then when I'm on set, it just all goes to pot. But
no, it's fine.
Baz is rolling his eyes over here.
It's terrible. It's terrible.
I'm terrible.
Yeah. We are going to reshoot major sections of the film.
No, God, no.
There's another question there. If you could get up, thank you.
I've noticed in some of your movies, this is for Claire, your fashion sense is pretty incredible. And I'm curious if you can talk about that and also about your other projects. I know you have Les Mis coming up, and you're in an Oliver Stone and a Francis Ford Coppola film.
I don't have much to say with my wardrobe. I basically trust everybody who's working on the film, and I don't try to meddle in with their job. I haven't loved all of the costumes I've worn, but I did actually love my wardrobe in this movie. And Kim Barrett, the designer, is just a genius. And I just remember looking at the costumes at the ball and thinking, "Oh my Lord, how did she come up with that?" They're so colorful and wonderful. But I'm doing Les Miserables in May in Prague, which should be great, with director Billy August, and it's with a wonderful cast: Jeffrey Rush, Liam Neeson, and Uma Thurman. So it's pretty cool, and it's yet another classic story, and we are telling it in a more traditional way. No, I wouldn't want to torture you. No, it's a dramatic version, and I had a little cameo role in an Oliver Stone movie, and it was a comedic part, and I basically spazzed out. I don't know what I did. I haven't seen any dailies. I'm a little frightened, but we'll see. And it's called, it's in between names. It may be called U-Turn, maybe called Stray Dogs. I don't know. And then the Francis Ford Coppola one, it's yet another Grisham movie. It's called The Rainmaker, and I play an abused wife. I know it's strange. I'm really young, and I'm getting married twice now on film. So, yeah, it was kind of interesting to discover what the psychology of an abused person is. What were the side effects? Well, sometimes I would forget to take off my makeup, and I'd wander around the streets, and I'd have big bruises on my face, and people would be like, giving me these very strange looks. And I'd be like, "What are you looking at?" And I'd realize, oh, I have bruises. I know that's not what you meant. But no, actually, it was more of a peripheral role. It wasn't as intense as Juliet was, certainly. So I pretty much played the love interest, which was a little frustrating. But the chance that I did have to act, I really enjoyed. And I did it with this guy, Matt Damon, who's terrific. He's young, he's hot. Yeah, he's cool. The next Leonardo DiCaprio. No, that's not true. No, gosh, why keep rolling your eyes?
I'm a director. we do that.
Miss Martin, was it very difficult to convert his ideas in the production design when I think about the ballroom, for example?
Yes, he's a torturer. No, it's just a process of collaboration. I mean, Baz collaborates with everyone, the actors, with me, with the costume designer, with hair and makeup. So it's a hard process because he is very exacting in what he wants, and it takes a long time to actually come to the definitive thing. But at the end, even though you may have rolled your eyes in torture and pain and you're saying, oh, please don't make me do that, you realise at the end that he's pushed you beyond your natural boundaries. So you've actually done more than you could possibly imagine you would ever do by yourself. So it's a long process and a hard one, but a satisfying one.
Question in the middle.
As a young actress, Claire, I'm just wondering if you can share with us your viewpoints on how to basically remain focused on your job. I know that a lot of actors and actresses you are how old now?
17.
17, my God. No, sorry. Just give us some insight how you stay grounded, how you avoid the pratfalls. I mean, these are those years where you know, rebellion, a lot of things.
No. Well, I've wanted to act since I was 5. I couldn't tell you why necessarily. I mean, nobody in my family was in the business. Just was always really driven to do this. No, I'm really focused on the work. I enjoy every minute of it. I can't imagine anything more dangerous than actually being truthful to a character and being honest in a scene and just trusting that it's going to take you to some really strange, sometimes dark places. There's no more powerful drug, and so I don't need that. And I have a really wonderful family, truly fantastic, and they've instilled very good values in me, I think, and they don't let me get too big for my britches. And I have great friends. I've just been very lucky in that I have a fairly strong base already, and a lot of young people are not so fortunate.
Question on the right-hand side. Could you please stand up? Thank you.
Question to the director. Did the editing follow the script, or did the editing follow the material that you shot?
It is interesting. I think our process, we take a long time to make things. And we do work in a very collaborative manner. And for that reason, when we write a script, it really is an accurate map of what we set out to do. So, although there were some corners there where we misjudged it and we had to adjust that in editing, it's quite remarkable, I think, that a lot of what is in this text, in our script, is really very close to what we ended up with. So, for example, a lot of those rhythmic devices that we use in the beginning, where it's just so relentless and so fast, you're begging it to stop, please. You know, that's in the script. And then when Romeo looks to Juliet, you know, we breathe and it becomes a movie. You know, up to that point, it's that kind of device of it being an assault. Really, is something that we plotted into the text. So, having said that, I think Jill is just a remarkable person to work with, and the team that we've always worked together as a team for a very long time. We actually don't take jobs. We're not really for hire in that regard.
Further questions? Question on the right-hand side.
My question is to director. In your film, some symbols, ancient symbols of love and peace, for example, heart and cross, turn to ornaments on weapons or violent bodies.
Yes.
What was more important for you? The ancient or the overtime story in Shakespeare language, or the symbols or the ornaments of contemporary time and contemporary world?
I mean, the religious iconography is simply plot point, really. It is a crucial plot point that when Father Lawrence says, well, Romeo, okay, I'll marry you, because if I marry you in the eyes of God, no man, the families cannot pull you apart. Now, it's absolutely crucial, if that's going to work, that everybody in that world believes in religion. It's a very religious world. It's a world where, religion and religion iconography is kind of dripping from the walls. The idea of religious symbols, we created Verona Beach, which is a fantasy city, out of a very accurate analysis of the Elizabethan world. So, religion tied up with politics. Everyone is armed. And converted that to 20th century images. Verona Beach is not Miami or Mexico City or Los Angeles. It is a fantasy city in which we play out this world. But the idea of the world being absolutely believing in God and religion is very, very important. There's a resonance there. The idea of weapons with religious symbols on them. It's not hard to think of a city which is adorned with religious icons, and yet people are shooting each other because you belong to the wrong brand of religion.
We were shooting in Mexico where that's true. Religion pretty much permeates every aspect of that society. And we were on the sound stages, and the workers, the Mexican workers would have shrines of Mary, it's their, and around that shrine would be images of, Playboy bunnies and women without their tops on. And I just went, oh, I don't get that. That's terrible. And it was so obvious, and it was so hypocritical. And I thought, my gosh, that's exactly those are almost the exact same images we're using in the movie. So that was just one example on the set.
You went around interviewing people in Mexico City. Why did you do that?
Can I hear that again?
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
You went around interviewing people in Mexico City before a pre-production stage.
Not in Mexico City, no. What in fact we did was this. The process was to, once we had established the idea of researching the Elizabethan world, like the stage of Shakespeare, and converting that into a sort of cinematic language, the next question was, how do you sort of steal images and notions from the 20th century and make up this kind of patchwork world? So we wanted to be in a city, when we wrote the screenplay, that we felt could help us identify the sort of dominant Western culture. Now, the sort of dominant culture, whichever way you look at it, in terms of films and television, is predominantly American. So we being a bunch of Australians, and it really is a predominantly Australian team that evolved the film. We went down to Miami, and it's in Miami that we actually interviewed lots of young kids in schools, etc., just to find out whether the big idea in the piece had real truth and relevance, and also to understand sort of contemporary youth, and so that perhaps the situations that we were creating had some grounded reality.
Must be very brief now. We have you first, and then you, and then we must finish.
Helen Barlow from Australia. Hi, I actually come from Sydney. And I have also been to Miami, actually, for the film festival there, and I couldn't help but feel that Miami was very much like Sydney, and that maybe there's a bit of Sydney in this film. Would you like to comment on that?
Well,
Sydney culture.
Yeah, no, what I will say is that whatever way you look at it, the film is, we are a team that's worked together for a very long time, and we continue to work together. And in fact, I think there were maybe 16 Australians on the film. It was sort of the international colours of filmmaking. We had Italian hair and makeup, and French and Germans and Mexican, Canadian, Americans, some Americans, just a few. But it really was a very international team. Having said that, I think that the kind of film that it is, whether you get it or you don't get it, whether you accept our style or you don't, it is our style. And I think that style is Australian in a sense. It is particular to the way we see things, and more importantly, the way we tell story. So I think there's a little bit of that in there. As to Sydney and Miami, they're similar but different too.
Last question on the right-hand side, far end.
Yeah, just following up on the last point.
Can you get up? Thank you.
Yeah. How do you see do you regard yourself as an Australian filmmaker first and foremost, and will you continue making films in America, or will you go back to Australia?
Yeah, I didn't make this film in America. In fact, as a team, other than the fact that we travel a lot, we are based in Sydney, Australia. And I'm happy to say that I'm continuing my relationship with 20th Century Fox, because they are, in fact, building a studio down in Sydney. And had we had a studio down there, the right kind of soundstage, we more than likely would have made the film there. We are an Australian team. It's fantastic to work, but all the world is a stage for us. We work with talent from all over the world. And, the reason I cast Claire Danes is not because she's was an up-and-coming great American star. It's because she was the best Juliet I could find in the world. And that... So don't you give me that about Rosie. But I mean, in truth, but we do see ourselves in everything that we make, and we don't just do film. In fact, I don't think of ourselves as kind of filmmakers or opera makers or election campaign givers. We decide on projects that we think will make life interesting and rich. So we did work with a big studio in terms of financing and distribution. It is technically, on paper, an Australian-Canadian co-production.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for spending time with us. And all the best for your time.
Now, can you make a stand in front of the yellow?